Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm coming to you with a new card that features the Maymay Made It stamp set called Butter Up. This is the monthly stamp club set for November. If you are not part of the stamp club though, you can still purchase this set from her website and I will link that below. The sentiments on this stamp set say, waffle I do without you. You make everything in life batter. You really stack up. And life is butter with you. So I'm starting out with a couple circles that I punched using my large Fiskars. I think it's a 3.5 inch circle punch. I cut this paper from Express It blending card. I really feel like this cardstock paired with a little bit of practice has really helped me up my alcohol marker game. Getting a little more comfortable with blending and things like that. And just maybe you'll see a little proof of that in this finished card. So I went ahead and I grabbed my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. This is the ink that I use predominantly when I am using alcohol markers. This is the ink that I keep in my craft room that I use for alcohol markers because it does not bleed. And I mentioned the sentiments earlier. The images in this stamp set include a stack of pancakes, which I'm going to be using today, a waffle, a pat of butter that's a little melty, some whipped cream, a blueberry, a strawberry, and a little leaf, which I believe is a little peppermint leaf. So today I decided that I was going to use this stack of pancakes just because it looked like a great opportunity to get some coloring practice in. And I knew that it might be fun because pancakes generally, the color's not super even, so I could play around with that a little bit. So I went ahead and grabbed a piece of cardstock and put it below my blending card circle. And this is just for me to be able to stamp off of the circle and also use as kind of a tester when I'm figuring out what marker colors to use. So I'm going to stamp this up. And then I'm going to grab the strawberry and I'm going to kind of stamp that in a random pattern around the pancakes. Now it's not super easy to see here, but this pat of butter is pretty brilliant. It is melting and a part of one of the corners looks like it's kind of dripping down in at an angle. So it kind of nestles in on the pancakes here, so that it looks like it is all melting and flowing in the same direction. So that's what I did, and that's why I offset it a little bit. There it is. So now I'm coming in with the strawberry stamp. I'm going to stamp this around kind of in a random fashion. I'm going to twist it a little bit each time that I stamp it. And really what makes this look a little more finished is that not all of the strawberries are completely on this little circle. A lot of them are stamped just at an angle with just a piece of them showing on the circle, and then the rest ended up stamping off on that little piece of cardstock that I'm using in the back. And of course, it looks like this takes a lot of thought because I did think about it probably a little too much. Kind of getting the orientation. I didn't want the finished product to look like all the strawberries were falling in at the same angle, which is really just how my brain works. So I flipped it around a little bit and took my time. So I went ahead and grabbed my alcohol markers. I use Arteza Everblend and find them to be a great quality marker. The saturation is really good. They have a wide variety and they are far less expensive than Copics. So I do have a couple Copics. Usually though, lately I've only been using the Copic blending pen. I use the Copic blending pen with my Arteza Everblend markers. So here I am just picking out a few markers, and you'll see that I laid down some color on my scratch paper to just kind of see the difference between what the lid tells me the color should be and what it looks like on paper. This was a little tricky because pancakes are different brown colors, maple syrup is different brown colors, and then the butter is brownish but yellow. So I wanted to make sure that I could differentiate in my finished card and that it would look kind of right just based on what I picked out. So, and then I just start to color, lay down some color, and if I left this in real time, it would be an hour long, so I'm just going to go ahead and speed it up a little bit here. If for some reason you are interested in seeing this in real time, just leave a message in the description box below, and I can load just this coloring piece in real time if you're interested. I really don't have great tips related to coloring. To me, it's been practice, watching a few videos, practicing some more, figuring out what pens you like, figuring out what happens when you use the blender or use a lighter color to blend in. All of those things take practice and time. So here I just lay down my lightest color, which is the technique that I use. I go in with the lightest color. I use the darkest color to add some depth, and then I blend with the medium color. Once in a while I'll go back in with my lightest color at the end just to kind of even things out. So now I grab a darker brown and just randomly put some dark brown highlights in here, or lowlights. If you imagine a pancake, it is a golden brown color, usually, with some darker spots in it. So that's the look I'm trying to achieve here. Of course, anytime I do a project video where I think the end result is decent, it turns out that I did some of the work off of the screen outside of the frame. But you'll see here that I am just adding some more color to the pancakes, and I'm going to go ahead and speed it up here for just a couple minutes. Here you see I have the butter all colored in, and I realized that it was a little dark and kind of faded into the syrup. So what I did is I went through my markers and I tried to find a bright yellow. You see I'm having a little trouble at first finding the right one. So I just keep putting down color on my scratch paper here. And then I find a yellow that I'm satisfied with. And so I go in, and the cool thing about alcohol markers is even though I have this dark color already laid down on this pad of butter, I just lay in a good amount of this light yellow and kind of saturate it. And what it does is it pushes back that darker yellow color. And then, you know, over a minute here, you see that it does lighten up and it achieves the effect that I'm looking for, to have it just a little more bright and like, you know, cartoon butter should look like. So I keep laying down the color and eventually I just kind of see it pop out. And the effect is a little better in real life than it is on the screen, but you can see a little bit of that here. So for some finishing touches here, I grabbed my white Jelly Roll pen. I believe this is the medium pen, and put some highlights in. No, I'm not really scientific about, you know, coloring in general or especially highlights. But what I did here is just try to keep the highlights all to one side of the image. So that doesn't mean that I only put white ink on the right side of this circle. It means that whatever the colored image was, I just tried to put a little bit of highlight on the right side of that particular image. You'll see here I'm just getting the ink flowing, and then I go in, I start with the strawberries. And then once I get done with the strawberries, I just go in and do a little bit of a pattern on the pancakes. It gave it a little bit of interest, and then went back in with the syrup and the butter. And I just used this same gel pen. You can see that I have another Signo Bold over there on the right-hand side, which is my favorite for the bold lines of white ink, but I just stuck with this one for this image. I am going to go ahead and speed it up, but if for some reason you want to see this in real time, just let me know in the comments below and I can post that or send that to you. So now I'm going to make the card base, and I'm going to start with a piece of cardstock that is 11 inches by 4 1/4. This is a standard card base size that would be scored at 5 1/2 and folded in half for a standard card base. But what I've done is I went in and I scored at 2 3/4 on the left side, and then honestly what I did is I flipped it around and scored the other side at 2 3/4 in. So you'll see what I have is a gatefold card, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp a sentiment inside. So I grab my stamp set and my stamp block and an ink pad, of course. And you'll notice that on the lid of this ink pad, I have a label. The label says alcohol ink. Of course, that does not mean that the Memento ink pad is alcohol ink itself. What it means is that this ink pad is good to use with alcohol inks. And that is my tip of the day. Go ahead and label your ink pads on the lid to remind yourself at a glance what media you can use those ink pads with. I have some that say watercolor, some that say standard marker. And if this tip is useful to you, if you could just take 1 second and hit the thumbs up and give me a like, that would be awesome. I thought this rich cocoa ink would match well with the image on the front. And then I just went ahead and picked out my sentiment and get it stamped up. So once I stamped it, I wasn't 100% excited about the saturation of the stamped image. Full disclosure, I should have seasoned the stamp. I should have primed it by doing a couple stamped images on a piece of scratch paper, which kind of helps somehow magically by science, helps the stamp just grab ink a little easier. So what I did to combat this is I grabbed my Jelly Roll pen. This one is not the white. This is the Sparkle Stardust. This is the Jelly Roll Stardust pen. I love this. It is adds a little bit of a shimmer, some glittery look, and then you see there I just lay that scratch paper on top of it and make sure that those little dots of color or glitter that I'm putting on there don't bleed. So because this card is pretty sweet overall, the paper that I decided for my backing was going to be between this pink polka dot and these hearts. And I did eventually decide on the hearts. So I cut this paper down to 2 1/2 by 4 inches, and I cut 2 of those. My glue of choice is art glitter glue, so I use that to glue these down, and you'll see that the pattern is cut in the middle. So I made sure to glue the left half on the left first, and then the right half. Of course, if it wouldn't have worked out that way, that would have been fine as well. Then I decided which side I was going to glue my pancakes down to, and not sure why I went with the left side, right? Correct? So then I eyeball it to kind of figure out where I'm going to put the glue. The key here is not to glue it to both sides of your gatefold card. So I went ahead and laid down glue on half of it. And then I laid it down on the table and brought my card base to my image to make sure that I covered up all the glue, that it didn't go too far, and that I didn't glue it down to both sides. So here I make that decision. And then it all makes sense. And there's my head. So I just kind of lightly adhere it, and then I turn it over just to kind of make sure that I don't need to make any adjustments. And then my card is done. Thanks for spending time with me again. The supplies that are featured in this video will be linked below in case you just want to check them out. And go ahead and subscribe and ring the notification bell so that you can get notified when I upload more Maymay Made It projects and my other paper craft videos. And don't forget, safety first.